Welcome back. You're watching Checkpoint. As always, the second hour of the show, we evaluate the week's top developments. And as I always say, what a week it has been. We started with the cabinet retreat in Naivasha, where the president read the Riot Act to his cabinet. Equally, we'll listen in to what the Chief Justice had to say on judiciary funds. She had something to complain about, and we'll take a look at that. Away from that, the AUC chairmanship position has been the talk of town. What exactly is cooking, not just in Kenya, but in Africa as well? So we'll evaluate these topics with my guests right here in studio. I'm joined by Ishmael Nyaribo, advocate. Wakili, asante sana for your time. Great to see you. Hope you had a fantastic week.
Thank you, Jesse. Yes, I had a good week, yes.
Good to have you with us.
Thank
and we're equally joined by the Duke of Mosocho, Dismas Mukua, political risk analyst. It's great to have you with us. Karibu sana.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot for the invitation.
Okay, let's begin with what exactly happened in Naivasha. And we want to hear from the president in terms of exactly what he articulated, a couple of sound bites on that second national executive retreat that happened in Naivasha this week. And we definitely had closed-door meetings. Details remain confidential, but from the little or much we've gathered, key performance indicators, policy implementation timelines, and overall responsiveness to national priorities were focal. Let's listen in to some of the sentiments that were shared by Kenya Kwanza leaders.
Into the future, we are going to have at least every year a meeting like this. And so that we can together look at where we are, where we need to go, and how we get there. In making sure that the proposals that have come from the executive, from the ministers and principal secretaries, as they tailor the programs that are necessary for us to implement the plan and proposing budgets for it. Parliament have done their bit.
And we also had an opportunity to look at the various sectoral areas as defined in the Nanyuki retreat. From the Nanyuki retreat, there are 5 specific cluster groups.
We said, let's try to de-risk this Eurobond, and then we will see how foreign direct investment cases and even the exchange rate, how it will respond. And we have seen that it has responded. We actually managed to restructure the maturity profile of future payments instead of having a bullet payment of 2 billion, because that is what was moving the market.
There is no room or space
every year
or opportunity for this administration not to deal with corruption firmly, decisively, and conclusively. As you heard in the meeting we had with the legislators and all the other groups, every principal secretary, every cabinet secretary is responsible for the decisions they make.
So every cabinet secretary is responsible for the decisions they make. Nyaribo, I mentioned the president read the Riot Act. So did this serve as the much needed wake-up call, an opportunity for course correction in the cabinet?
Yeah, you know, this government took over power in 2023, and you are talking about if this is a wake-up call. I don't know if they will wake up anyway, because I think there's nothing more disturbing for a leader when your own people don't hear you. There's nothing more discouraging in a boardroom or in, office if the staff cannot just hear what you're saying. But in this case, it's not like they cannot hear. The problem is, and I've said this again, it's capacity. It's a question of capacity. There is so much you can expect from a person, Jesse. If you want a driver, he has to have the skill to drive. If you want, a good, a farmer, he has to know how to plant, how to till. if you have no idea that the president's agenda is this, and he has always said every ministry will be liable for, and is responsible, and is willing to give the budget. And by the way, when you look at the president talking, you see that he has a dream, he has an objective, he has a focus. If his people don't tap into that, it will simply remain to be rhetoric, and you will come back again. It is 2027, and then we are again, fighting over the same thing. So here, the issue is, what is the nature of the cabinet ministers the head of state has? Nothing personal. Are they able to pick up a policy the way it is and implement it? This is the issue. So, and I think the head of state will continue really complaining unless he decides it is time. I have to shake off, this cabinet and reshuffle it and stop being too, being worried too much about your friendships. You can be friends, and you remember Mo used to say, you can be my friend, but when it comes to national leadership, it's a different story. But I think the head of state paid too much premium to friendship. And this is, I think, what is really eating into his good policies and good focus. If he can work on eliminating friendship from his leadership, he will get the best people that are there. They're in the country. He will get the best, and then they will help him lead. So I think on my part, if you ask me, major problem is the way he's too loyal to his friends, and he's worried or scared of losing them.
Well, he talked tough during that particular meeting, said it won't be business as usual, Mukua. So as you add on what Wakili has said, how did you find the national government's trajectory in terms of pursuit of the national development goals? Yeah.
For me, one of the most important things from the Naivasha meeting is when he was making his closing remarks, he told the members of the cabinet as well as principal secretaries that nobody should intimidate them, that all of them have got his mobile number, and in case they need guidance on how to take a decision, they can give him a call or call the DP or call the prime cabinet secretary for guidance. And he indicated, and that's one of the key leadership skills, that you must take responsibility for every decision that you take. If you take a decision, you're going to enjoy the benefits or suffer the consequences. Now, a departure from what Mr. Nyaribo has indicated, whichever organization you work for, whichever organization you run, you need to have regular meetings and review your performance. Because at the beginning of a financial period or a certain, depending on how the organization is structured, you set your targets. So after 1 year, you need to go and sit and ask yourselves, have we achieved our targets? Yes. Then you tick the box. Have we achieved our targets? No. Why did we not achieve these targets? Is it because we don't have financial resources? In the case of Kenya, is it because of the judiciary? Because if you just drive without stopping at a pit stop to ask yourself pertinent questions, you may think you are doing very well, while in fact the scoreboard is reflecting negatives. So in my view, having these meetings on an annual basis is a very good idea. What are our targets this year? What have we achieved? Okay. Where is the cost of variance? In fact, as an accountant and as a management accounting practice, you always need to ask yourself, this is your target, this is what you have achieved. Why do you have a variance? Now, that variance is what you need to question. And as again, Nyaribo, as I indicated, if the variance is occasioned by friendship, then such kind of people may need to be requested to take leave. Because at the end of the day, Mura doesn't care who is a friend to the president. Mura wants affordable housing. Mura wants affordable health care. Mura wants food security. And Mura doesn't have a contract with the members of the cabinet or principal secretaries. Mura has got a contract with President Ruto. So the person who will take responsibility after 5 years is President Ruto and no other person. But as again Nyaribo has indicated, there could be some members of the cabinet or principal secretaries who are simply in those roles because of their friendship. I'm not sure whether there is evidence, empirical or otherwise, to support that position. Because so far, he has not demonstrated that out of the cabinet, 4 are incompetent and 4 don't have capacity, and they're there simply because they're friends with the president.
I mean, don't you know there are people with Form 4 certificates in in the cabinet, honestly. I mean,
allegedly.
It's common knowledge. I mean, there was a lot of hue and cry about the qualifications some of the people have. When I talk about friendship, you have seen when the head of state is having a function, you have seen members of parliament trying to usher in people as if they are, acting like protocol officers. I mean, you've seen that. So what do you call that? He's a member of parliament, but he's the one trying to tell you to come and stand somewhere. That's a member of parliament. He's not, so I think...
But members of parliament do not serve in the cabinet.
No, my point, Jesse, that I'm addressing friendship. Where there is friendship, you see everything is mixed up. You don't know who is handling what. Everyone is excited to be around the president. I mean, even you breach protocol. So I think the head of state must actually be advised and look into how he can eliminate and have his surrounding quite handled professionally, other than, emphasizing on who comes from my backyard or who is my friend, so that, the country is assured, and so that people can predictably, know that, okay, when I go to State House or to the head of state's function, I will not be meeting some opposing member of parliament who I don't like, for that matter, politically, is the one ushering me or asking me not to come. And then I have seen also some clips where the head of state has to push somebody. I mean, I think friendship is a major issue here, and the head of state must look into how he can keep his personal friends and buddies a little bit out of the inner circle. Yes.
Obviously, just the responsibility of a leader is to attract, retain, and reward top talents, and then give them resources and performance indicators. Any successful leader then must ask people who are not delivering to seek for opportunities elsewhere. That is the case we are told about Singapore, about South Korea, and even our neighbors in Rwanda. Understand for President Kagame, if you're not delivering, then you'll be requested to seek opportunities elsewhere.
Is that the case in Kenya?
So in case there's anybody in the cabinet today, we don't have the formal results that are among the members of the cabinet. These ones have not delivered.
No, but we know of the issues. If we go to the Ministry of Interior, of course, passports and whatnot, and it's been in media and whatnot, and their own words, I'll be camping at Nyayo House until this is sorted. Of course, we saw a meeting right after the cabinet retreat, meeting stakeholders at Nyayo House trying to sort it out. But if it was in Rwanda...
but the german question again to ask is that when you're talking about passports, are those factors within the control of Professor Kithure Kindiki, or there are systems issues that he has no capacity? Because again, in leadership, I mean, if you're a medical doctor and the patient comes in and is sweating, you don't just administer maybe any kind of medication. You must identify the disease.
Very true.
You must get a prescription or a diagnosis, something like that, before you get a prescription. So, in my view, it would be very prudent to identify if there's a cabinet secretary who is not delivering. Is it systematic issues, or it's actually the gentleman who is lazy?
But what if the cabinet secretary themselves say, I will sort this out? They've put their word out to the members of the public that this will be sorted.
They must take responsibility. They must take responsibility.
You see, even if it's a clerk in an office or a director of, say, immigration or whatever department, honestly, like you keep saying, Dismas, the CEO of the country is the head of state. So the buck stops with him at the end of the day. If there's a director who is not delivering and he complains about the systems, if there is an airport that is leaking, of course the line minister will be concerned. But in the end, internationally, when visitors are coming into the country, they will blame the head of state, like, what's all this? So, and again, you will realize when either director and then an HR or a clerk is not performing, most of the times it is because of laziness encouraged by friendship. That's where I always have to go there, because if you have people working, they know they're earning a pay to take to their children and there's nothing else involved, everyone will work. But where I have a connection to State House, I have a connection to the head of state, people will say, even the other people around you will feel like you are favored. So the most important thing for the head of state to do is actually to try and kick out a lot of his friends who may, out of that connection, have lethargy
Okay.
in terms of performing.
Okay, and we definitely hope gone are the days where CSs would contradict government's position on crucial matters. Definitely, it's a welcome move, as Dismas said, this annual meetings in order to strategize and check out the key performance indicators. Let's talk about the judiciary, because as that was happening in Naivasha, still in Naivasha, the Chief Justice met with top judges from the courts of the land and had a couple of sentiments around the judicial funding, reservations that it might affect judicial independence in the long run. And she mentioned that the judiciary has received a budget, or rather has only received 20 billion shillings against the budget of 43 billion shillings. Let's listen in.
We have also taken notes with concern of the continued disobedience of court orders and denial of adequate resources to the judiciary to be able to undertake our work. And we urge Kenyans to continue supporting the independence of the judiciary. The judiciary will collaborate and work with other arms of government in the spirit of interdependence, reciprocation. However, the other arms of government must also respect the independence of the judiciary. There shall be more interaction between the judiciary and other arms of government to communicate the needs of the judiciary without interfering with the independence of the judiciary in the spirit of cooperative dialogue. The judiciary continues to face the challenges of underfunding. Therefore, there is need for continued engagement with other actors and stakeholders to pursue constitutional and legal amendments to ring-fence the budget of the judiciary.
So, Nyaribo, let's start with you for obvious reasons. Talk to us about the detrimental effect of the lack of funds to the dispensation of justice and rule of law. And equally, she mentioned about independence and interdependence. We'll continue with these collaborative efforts with the arms of government, but will remain independent. Yeah.
Thank you. I think that issue of interdependence and independence is really not a big, word to crack or understand. It's as simple as the judiciary should be left to do its work the way it should do under the Constitution of Kenya, Article 160, 161, so that they can discharge their mandate of offering, justice to the people of Kenya. That's one. Mm-hmm. But what then does independence mean vis-a-vis finance? The provisions relating to how the judiciary should be funded are in the Constitution itself, the same articles I've mentioned. The decision for the exchequer or the executive to allocate the percentage required by the judiciary is in the Constitution. It is not the finance cabinet secretary to decide when I want to give or not. But of course, for, balancing act, the judiciary can be given this much money, and within a short time again, they be given the other portion. That is a question of how much do we have to disperse right now. Okay. But the moment you deny judiciary their budget, you have actually breached the Constitution, because in a way, you're making them to depend on you. You're making them to be subservient to your authority, because they've got to keep coming to you. It's a way of trying to make them keep coming to me so that I can manage them, micromanage them for that matter. So the issue of budget, the issue of how much should be given to the judiciary is there in the Constitution, and they should be given at the right time when they require it. So I think anybody trying to withhold, and we have seen this in the former regime also, anyone trying to withhold finances which go into running the judiciary activities is actually trying to interfere with the independence of the judiciary. Independence then, as the CJ has again confirmed, it's not a question of I cannot see you eye to eye. I am hiding myself in some room. And I think this is where many professionals in the country, including our members, misunderstand the question of independence. Independence does not mean proximity in terms of physical interaction. It is important for governance purposes for the CJ or the judiciary to continue interacting with the other arms of government. So I think it must be re-emphasized that the judiciary budget must be given to them as and when needed, and not by choice of the executive, but as per the constitution of the country.
Interesting. And as you come in this mess, I mean, the Kenya Kwanza administration banked on the independence, financial autonomy of the judiciary in order to avoid what scenario was painted right here by Nyaribo in terms of the previous administration. With such sentiments from the CJ, and we've heard from the executive quite vocal about what they term as inadequacies within the judiciary, how do we maintain this balance of independence, but interdependence rather? Yeah.
I actually expected Ishmael to speak about the judiciary fund, but let me just address the issues you've raised.
Yeah.
There are three things that we cannot start having a conversation or negotiating. Number one is respecting court orders. Everybody is bound by the Constitution of Kenya to respect court orders. So that is not debatable that you are taking this position or another position. Number two, the institutional independence. That is the entire judiciary. That again we cannot debate. Number three, decisional independence of every judge and magistrate in Kenya. Again, that we cannot negotiate. Now, if for any reason parties in court are unhappy with the outcome, then they are advised to go through the appeal system so that at the end of the day, the issue gets sorted out. Now, that kind of environment is what positions Kenya as an FDI destination. Because when somebody wants to invest in Kenya, when you look at the World Bank rating, IMF, all the international bodies, one of the things they look at is the judiciary independent? In case I get into a dispute with parties, do we have a judiciary that can look at this matter and make a fair hearing?
Okay.
So recently, the president was in Japan, and the issue came out, and people were actually surprised that some of the Kenya Kwanza initiatives have been stopped by the judiciary. And in my view, that is a good thing that the government respected that. So it means that anybody in Kenya has to do that. But about the judiciary fund, it's incumbent again on the Chief Justice to have a special team that will be having regular conversations with members of the National Assembly to pitch tent at the relevant committees and proactively lobby for resources. Because Kenya is not flooded with resources. So the judiciary needs resources, the executive needs resources, the legislature needs resources, everybody needs resources. There are a million competing interests. That is why successful leadership of the judiciary demands that the leader of the judiciary must have regular conversations with the key persons at the National Assembly and at the Senate and at the executive for proactive lobbying. If you're the head of the judiciary, in as much as the Constitution has given its dictates, but you just go, you go lean back. I want you just to lean back to demonstrate. So you lean back and then hope everything is going to flow. Well, that is the valid expectation, but you must go the extra mile. I even see members of the National Assembly pitching tents, going to principal secretaries, cabinet secretaries, and doing proactive lobbying, which in my view I think is a very good thing. However, at the end of the day, the judiciary must be defended to the hilt, and I have to wish him well. He's running, he wants to represent lawyers at the Judicial Service Commission. So I hope when he gets to that role, he will not sit back and wait for money to come in. They must have proactive lobbying, proactive conversations. Because that's what MPs want.
You see where it's confusing when Edisma says you need experts to lobby in the National Assembly and Senate. That is actually interfering with the independence of the judiciary, exactly what I'm saying. We may have two different sides to look at it. But in reality, according to the Constitution, how much is to be given is stipulated. When it is supposed to be given, it is stipulated. So when you, and we agree, there's no country with enough resources that they are excess they can throw around. But how much is collected is known. And a portion of that must be surrendered to the judiciary. A portion of some should also be, surrendered to the National Assembly and so on and so forth. So to say that somebody in the executive can decide that now, because we have new projects in terms of housing levy, I am now going to take money to the housing levy, and I squeeze the judiciary, money and take it to, that is not allowed, and that is what the Chief Justice is saying. There should be, in fact, she's doing very well when you talk about trying to interact with other arms of government. You know what Chief Justice Mutunga did, you know what Chief Justice Maraga, did. I mean, they were not interested in any manner, interacting with that. So in terms of governance, by the way, when the country gets to understand, especially professionals and especially the legal fraternity, when they get to understand what it means to get things moving, working with other departments is correct. But if you say that they have to go again, sit down somewhere, try to, ask the Treasury, we need this money, please make sure you, I think that is extreme, interference with the independence of the judiciary.
I think you did not understand my point clearly. I did not suggest that the Chief Justice
in another language.
Yeah, I did not say no. I'm the Duke of Mombasa. So, I did not suggest that the Chief Justice abandons our work and gets attend at the National Assembly. No, but having those regular meetings, maybe with the president every quarterly, for them to keep on comparing notes. What he has actually described is to be found in the utopian world where things are automatic. But we are in a situation where people are competing for resources. Those are early morning cups of tea, Kissi tea or Kissi coffee, just comparing notes that we need extra resources, how are you making progress? Those are okay. And by having those meetings, it does not mean that when you have a round conversation with the president, the two speakers, and the Chief Justice here, that she loses independence. No. The judiciary maintains the independence. The judges maintain their decisional independence, and everybody's happy.
So it's not a case of scratch my back, I scratch yours,
No. It's just, I mean, if right now, majority of Kenyans have got, mobile numbers. Okay. If you're on postpaid, Safaricom will send you a polite reminder that your bill is due. So it doesn't mean they're lobbying for you to pay the bill, but I know they're sending you a reminder so that, you have to create top-of-mind awareness. That is the word I was looking for.
Sorry, I'm not really going to prolong this.
Yeah.
But the judiciary needs money to build more courts, for example, so that they can actually deliver justice at the doorstep. Now you hear them saying that they want to be housed at the Huduma Center because they don't have enough facilities. The judiciary needs money to implement its project, social transformation, whatnot. They need cash to pay these salaries. Yeah. The moment you suffocate, or rather the moment you deny the judiciary funding, which they need to pay salary, I mean, you're automatically saying you are opening the windows and doors for corruption. I think one of the institutions we will not want to start playing or toying around with will be the judiciary, so that it can maintain its independence to help people who have disputes to be dispensed quickly. But if you start to say, and I agree with your philosophy of interacting and going to push, I mean, that's the only way smart people work. You have to push work so that it can be done. Yeah. But if you subject the judiciary, where we know it is this percentage that must go, so that they can utilize it in building courts, they can utilize it in their transportation and salaries, I think that is interference with the independence of the judiciary.
Well, it's an intricate balance, we must say, but what should remain untouched is the independence of the judiciary. Let's shift focus to matters African continent, all to do with the Africa Union Commission chairmanship position, where Raila Odinga declared his interest in his candidature in that position. That was almost a fortnight ago. Time flies, and the Azimio leader Raila Odinga jetted out of the country, headed to Germany, a country where he attended his tertiary education, early 60s to 70s. Let's just look at some of the reactions as he declared his candidature and what some members of the ODM party had to say about the enthusiasm by government officials in pushing for Raila's bid.
And I believe that working together with all these countries, we can be able to emancipate Africa. There is right now brain drain out of our continent. It is also actually appalling to see young African people drowning in the Mediterranean in search of greener pastures out of the continent. And because of all these considerations that I am inclined to accept the challenge. Should the leadership of Africa want my services, I am ready and offer myself to be of service to this continent.
Baba hajakimbia uchaguzi mkuu unaokuja, hajabwaga ODM, hajabwaga Azimio. Ni kazi tu kwa muda na atarudi hapa tuchape kazi ya uraisi kama kawaida. Lakini pongeza UDA kwa kusapoti baba kwa hiyo kiti. Jazi ya hisani ni kurudisha hisani. Ikiwa UDA yenyewe imeona anayefaa hicho kiti Kenya nzima ni baba, si uraisi huu washampatia tayari.
Okay, so much has been read in that particular move. But before we start with the local politics, let's look at the bigger picture, Dismas. Raila's candidature as the AUC chair. What boxes does Raila tick that makes the Kenyan government so enthusiastic in making sure he's successful? As a matter of fact, the Speaker of the National Assembly, Moses Wetangula, said they will fund his bid to the AUC chair position. Your take?
Well, I had the occasion to socialize with the requirements. They talk about an advanced degree, a master's, change leadership. There are so many attributes. But I guess for Mr. Raila Odinga is that he's a statesman and he's got a very solid brand recognition across Africa. Mm-hmm. In fact, when he travels from one city to another, the people he's meeting, I would easily venture that he probably has a first-name relationship with about 25% of his voters for this particular case for the AUC role. Yeah. I mean, he's said to be close to the DRC president. He's said to be close to the South Africa president. He's said to be close to majority of the presidents in Africa. And I guess the fact that Nairobi is sponsoring and supporting his candidature, then he must be close to President Ruto. But one of the biggest challenges I've noticed is that the way the local political players, as well as the media, are treating his candidature. Some of your colleagues have been a major letdown for Kenya. Instead of asking ourselves that if Raila Odinga takes up this role, what does it mean for Kenya? What does it mean for East Africa? Mm-hmm. What does it mean for Africa? And what does it mean for the world? They're focusing on so-called ODM orphans. They're saying who is going to fill the vacuum in Luenyanza. And then they're introducing petty party politics and petty tribal politics to an international assignment. Like the soundbite you've played, the gentleman seems to suggest that if Raila takes this position, a few months to the next election, he's going to abandon his position at AUC and come and run for this position. Some ODM fellas were asking, how come UDA did a news conference to support his candidature? And right now we are talking about a very serious international assignment. Okay. No Kenyan has ever held this kind of assignment. Sure. The closest Kenya had was a gentleman called Salim Ahmed Salim from Tanzania. So instead of us rallying together as a nation and supporting Mr. Odinga's candidature, everybody is looking at his insurable interest. People are likely to get a beating in 2027 are the ones who are saying, no, Raila Odinga is going to come back. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. So in my view, what Mr. Raila Odinga needs to do as a matter of urgency is, with the leadership of President Ruto, develop a winning strategy and identify, when you're doing systems analysis and design, you look at the key success factors, then you do a critical path analysis. What do we need to do to take up this role as AUC? They get the key success factors, and all Kenyans work towards that goal. So if you've been winning an election simply because you are loyal to Raila Odinga, just accept reality that you are going to lose that position. Let's support Raila Odinga to secure this role. In any event, one of the things that Kenya Kwanza indicated is they're going to create opportunities for Kenyans at the international level, and it seems that Mr. Raila Odinga will be the biggest beneficiary of that economic diplomacy.
And just to clarify, when we were fronting the candidature of the former cabinet secretary, is it Amina Mohammed? Is it to the same position where she wasn't successful? It was against Musa Faki, I think.
Yeah.
So once beaten, twice shy.
However, that is why I've indicated we need to sit down and say, we do the critical path analysis, identify the key success factors, and address them to the hilt. You see now, when you get the ODM party folks in Kenya saying he may abandon his position, our competition may use these clips for their campaigns, saying, look at what the loyal ODM members are saying, that the party leader is using this one as a stepping stone for the presidency of Kenya. And it would appear to me that the majority of Kenyans don't even understand how the African Union works. And yet all of them have got smartphones.
So as you come in, and I'd like to put this question, because there are no permanent friends in politics, only interests align. And it seems the interests are aligning right now. And I want you to be our local political man right now. Well, what exactly is going to happen to ODM through a political lens? Because we've heard of talk that, I know it's a political party with structures and whatnot, but we've heard of talk that ODM is Baba and Baba is ODM,
I think just the traction we create in an argument is normally the most important beginning point. And Kenyans are fond of always doing like how children or boys throw stones at each other in the market. And this is what has actually played out. There is absolutely nothing wrong for Raila Odinga to be fronted for the seat of African Union chairman because he's 100% qualified. He has proper understanding of the region affairs. He has, grasp of trade issues in the African continent. He has an understanding about security issues. So within the region of East Africa and also within African continent. And if you listen to Raila Odinga when he talks about the history of the African continent and what happened in Chad, what happened in Ghana, in Nigeria, he has the grasp. So in terms of qualifications, we are not debating. Whether he will go there will then depend on all these 54 plus, presidents. And like this must say, they're kind of, relating he does with these regional leaders. Again, that is not debatable. Now he's talking about ODM and he's also forgetting that the traction created by the Kenya Kwanza MPs is as if they are bringing it like, now we are taking your man and you will be an orphan. And truly, as he has said, you're reducing such a global recognition likely to be given to Kenya to an ODM and UDA event. So you can't stop life. Whether Raila goes to African Union, you have rightly asked, then what happens here? There's nothing wrong. Life will go on. And I think if ODM and the Azimio Wiper people come together and decide we want to be behind so and so, there are several leaders in the Azimio who can come together and actually give the president quite a bit of competition. The problem with our country is that we demean and empathetically try to, down-talk the others, even on such a global scenario, global scene. So ODM will not die in that sense. It might be weakened. So what? We are still, as a country, elevated to that high level. So you are so worried that we can't be so worried that ODM then will be at least weaker by one man who is very strong. There will be Wiper, there will be so many other parties who want to come together and try to take the country further. So if you ask me, it is important that Raila goes to that office. it is important to understand that behind the scenes, we will acquire and we will, have a very special position globally, because the global friends will look at Kenya as a strong competitor in terms of the region, and we will create wealth that way. But locally, I think we should at least be least concerned with those small politicians who are trying to say, "Oh, now you have lost him. Oh, now we are going to beat you up." Those are, they should not even come to national limelight, by the way, if you ask me. They should be discussed somewhere in Machakos and in Bondo and in Mombasa and Kisii. They should not be brought to national limelight.
Now tell me, should we bring this to national limelight? A picture speaks 1,000 words. We saw Raila went to Germany, and I know he's vied for the presidency 5 times. Amongst the requirements is, degree and whatnot. But what do you make of the optics in terms of the message that was trying to be sent, that Raila made a trip to Germany and, showed us these institutions that he attended apparently a little bit early on in the 1960s?
Well, as a communication consultant, I was trying to make out and understand why Mr. Odinga went to his school, and I couldn't make sense. Maybe the AU requirements requires that you come with a certified copy of your master's degree. Maybe that is what he went to look out, or maybe it was some sort of that he was homesick. You notice it was in the campaign of Mr. Elkano Dembo, who is said to be a key architect of his campaign. It's not very clear on the reason why he went to his school.
Yeah.
But what is clear is that he has the qualifications necessary for this position. What is clear is that we must abandon tribal and petty politics so that let Mr. Raila Odinga play at the international league. Now, instead of allowing him to play at the international league, you want to take him to my village to start commenting on local issues, which means that they need to have a very solid strategy.
Okay.
And I can even venture to say they need to have a very solid communication strategy. He may be knowing all these, majority of the presidents on a first name basis, but every single voter will ask themselves, what is my selfish interest? And I think this issue is best left to Mr. Musalia Mudavadi in his docket to guide the entire process with the leadership of President Ruto, so that we get this role. And as we've said times above number, we must not stop at the Africa Union. Let us look for opportunities all over the world. I keep on telling you that in the next G20 or G7, we need to have 4 Kenyans. One Kenyan from UK and another one from another country.
Okay.
So, let's take advantage of the opportunities brought by globalization.
Just before you end on that point, this is why I keep telling you, it's a question of the tension you create. Look at, we're actually worried or discussing why he went to his former school. He can go, why not? You see, so if you read too much into it, and then you make it petty. And in terms of saying we should look for jobs all over the world, there are so many Kenyans outside working in almost every other country. You saw when the head of state has been going all over, we have a lot of people out there. The diaspora is filled with a lot of Kenyans. Yeah. The issue then, which denies us chances in the United Nations, in the African Union, is actually the same thing this master said. It's the petty politics. When you start wondering, how can a Kenyan now go and work out there? Then when our friends look at us, they realize these guys are still in some primitive age or something. Okay. Instead of allowing their people to go out and work, they are concentrating their issues about the Nyumbani Fitinas, and somebody is unable to pull himself out so that he can go and work in the
allow me to give him a crash program on what news is. When Mr. Raila Odinga, who is running for AUC chair, goes anywhere at this stage, it's news. A curious journalist will want to establish what is he doing there. Yeah. So by a journalist trying to find out, Mr. Raila Odinga, what were you doing at that school, is not being petty. It's a responsibility of the journalist to fish for news. In fact, it would be irresponsible for Mr. Raila Odinga to go to his school and a journalist doesn't fish for news to find out what are you doing there. Another thing that we have to say times above number, and I've become a disciple. Let's start encouraging people to speak many languages than 3. I mean, like for me, my mother tongue, English and Swahili, should not be sufficient. I should have another language, maybe French or Spanish.
Okay.
Because, again, part of the reason why most Kenyans don't get those international jobs, you are required to speak maybe English with Arabic or French, and then the only thing they know is English, Sheng, Kiswahili, and their mother tongue, then they get locked out.
Okay, interesting. We'll definitely see how the campaigns play out as Kenya lobbies for its candidate to replace the current chair of the Africa Union Commission in 2025. A lot will play out in that particular field. But as we conclude, we want to highlight Marta's budget, because just last week we saw the Azimio la Umoja One Kenya coalition on Thursday voice their concerns around the 4.2 trillion shilling budget. And as we well know, the government is actually on course in preparing an expenditure plan for the 4.2 trillion shilling budget for the 24-2025 financial year. Let's listen in to what Kalonzo Musyoka had to say in terms of his concerns around Kenya's biggest budget so far.
Party, we believe that Kenyans will thrive when we cut, not when we increase taxes. The BPS reviews lofty figures in terms of revenue with huge deficits. We believe that the country will thrive when the regime moderates its expenditure, reduces wastages, and adopts a rights and zero-based budgeting approach. The Budget Policy Statement 2024 is high-sounding, vague with promising titles, but only intends to raise expenditures and to spend what we don't even have.
So there's always that issue. If you talk to economists, we have this humongous budget that we struggle to finance, that we might end up borrowing in order to fund the deficit. So with this, Kenya's biggest budget so far, 4.2 trillion shillings, it's definitely a concern. Are we plugging in the holes that, you know, corruption actually takes taxpayers' money? A lot to look at this. Nyaribo, your take on the 4.2 trillion shilling budget and the concerns around taxation or over-taxation, as Kalonzo Musyoka puts it.
You know, for our viewers to understand this, I sit at the Budget and Finance Committee of the Law Society. What I have discovered and what I have seen practically, I mean, for people to understand, you see, the experts prepare a budget. Then it comes to for approval.
Yes.
That's what we do. And when you look at the budget, you're like, okay, fine, this one is really an unnecessary expenditure. You go, this one, it can be accommodated. This one, we cannot agree. And then you go back to, okay, fine, now you have the items. Where are you funding it from? Where are you getting the money to fund this? Because if what we have is 3.5 trillion and you go ahead and give us a budget of 4.2, the question then for any budget committee, both in Parliament and in the Senate, they will ask, where is this money coming from? And why did we shoot up this expenditure to this much? Now, in Kenya, there's a big problem because the men in the National Assembly seem to be really agreeing with the president without putting enough question to his technocrats. So the Treasury will come up with a budget and then they will propose that this is what needs to be done. But when this budget is being looked at by the members of Parliament, the relevant committee, then they are unable to question it to the extent that they bring it down to 3.5 billion. I mean, 3.5 trillion. So it comes up to us, and we see that we are actually going over and above. The other problem is that of over expectation. When Kenya Kwanza was, you know, riding on hustler, you know, theme and saying this is what we are going to do, they underestimated that Kenya is a progressive nation, and there will be need even to borrow so that you can actually finance the projects. When they came into the office, then they realized, oh, we actually must borrow. So they gave us some funny chorus of, we did not find any money in the Treasury, or the former regime has taken everything. But they were actually preparing the ground for borrowing, because, I mean, all governments borrow. I believe that it's a question of how much governments borrow, but governments keep borrowing both from international partners and even from local, from the local market.
Banks, yeah.
So I think that over expectation of the Kenya Kwanza is what is making us to see this kind of thing, plus the technocrats who simply give the figures they want, and the national parliament that is not going to critique and reject some of the items in the budget. That's my view.
Let's talk about, because it's a critical issue, government expenditure vis-a-vis what goes to development projects. We well know a chunk of it goes to recurrent expenditure. And we've heard from the president time and time again, most recently in the cabinet retreat, that wastage is not allowed in my government. But if you look at the control of budget, I'm sure you've come across those headlines about curtains and furniture and whatnot. If we're truly in a hole, we should stop digging. Have we stopped digging?
You've asked a loaded question that requires a professor of economics. But to break it down, number one, again, times above number, we have spoken here about the need of having zero-based budgeting. So that at the beginning of every financial period, the relevant accounting officers start from scratch. They start building their budget from zero. They build it upwards. Zero-based budgeting. Others would like to refer to it as program-based budgeting. Now, when you have a zero-based budgeting, then you account for every coin. But if your budgeting is such that last year I was given 1 billion, so next year give me 2 billion, then probability of wastage is extremely high. And then there was also a commitment to make procurements to be very visible, so that you don't get 2, 3, 4 suppliers, in Kenya referred to as cartels, sitting down and determining the price. So there needs to be a lot of visibility on that. Then number 3, when you talk about revenues, there are 2 sides. It's how much tax comes in, and then how is it utilized? And I think the utilization is the elephant in the room. Okay. Because when people feel that the government is not sweating the dollar, in this case the Kenyan shilling, then they begin to ask, why should I go work hard, give them money, and I see the money buying single malt whiskey, I see the money being used in a manner that does not promote my selfish interest. So that is something that they need to do. In other words, the government needs to inspire confidence to Kenyans that when you pay your taxes, they'll be put into good use. If majority of Kenyans believe that you pay your taxes, you are tax compliant, but the money is not going to be well utilized, then people start raising eyebrows. And in that case, we go to Nordic. A number of Nordic countries have got very high tax rates, others up to 60%. But what do they get from that? They know that at the moment you pay your taxes, you can go home and enjoy your coffee. That the government will provide everything, and not a single coin is going to be wasted. Now, for Kalonzo Musyoka, what he has indicated, if he expects to replace Raila Odinga, then he must stop giving general and blanket statements. Azimio right now has got members in the National Assembly and in the Senate. They should be preparing policy alternatives or proposals, so that when these issues are being discussed at the National Assembly or the Senate, they do not walk out, but engage in vigorous intellectual conversations with their members. Because even my grandmother in the village can say, I don't like this budget, the way Kalonzo has indicated. But it requires for him to offer leadership and point out. You know what happens in other countries when the government presents a budget statement, then the opposition or the minority, they also present there so that people can actually compare. But now he's just given blanket statements. And he's a very good lawyer like Anyaribo, so he's used Shakespearean English. But what does Morate come out of that?
Jesse, what actually we have not addressed, just a one-liner.
Sure.
Much of this budget is for wastage purposes, in terms of how much fuel they will, how much cars, the VIPs will use on the road. How many government buildings are underutilized, and a ministry is still going to hire, a whole 3, 4, 5 floors of a building because it is new. So I think if really accountants like you, Dismas, should actually go down and comb through the budget, what is unnecessary. I'm telling you, you will find that a lot of this money is going to flowers and tea and the limos that are accompanying some VIP, including friends of the head of state, who actually should not be entitled to. You saw the security minister complain. The police, I think they were saying, no, there are people who are using sirens and they are not supposed to use. Some of these things are just issues of ego and issues of opulence, which is unnecessary. Okay. And it is all sitting on our shoulders as a country. You remember in one of them, Kibaki time and Moi time, they did away with sorry. With not sirens, with heavy gaslers and all that.
Passats.
Why do we go back to these things every time? Because human beings by nature are corrupt.
Okay.
Human beings have a desire to do certain things for opulence purposes. I don't know whether we need more pastors to keep, reminding people that your heart as it is corrupt and it needs to be changed. So the biggest problem is that.
So, gentlemen, our time is up, but it would be improper of us because we've talked about Raila's candidature, and he mentioned that a news person following Raila going to Germany is not really news, yeah? So
I'm giving him a quick program, a quick crash program. I think he's well educated.
Exactly. So, in the same spirit of following up on news, and we talked about Raila's candidature, how about yours? Because I saw news that been cleared, sort of. You're eyeing the JSC position, representative from LSK. Talk to us just briefly, yeah?
Jesse, I want to join the, colleagues from the Law Society of Kenya to serve members and to serve the country. I have always been very forthright on this and honest about it. I said it long back. I hope that the members can give me that chance to serve at the Judicial Service Commission as a male representative for the Law Society of Kenya. I had a challenge which my brother here was calling tribulations, but that was sorted by our very honest judges in the judiciary. And they inspired confidence in me and in my supporters that, yes, we can come back and we bounce. And I remember they told me, please don't extend time for campaigns because it is within my right to extend. But I said I have seen how my colleagues have really, exhausted themselves and battered, spent a lot of money. I said, one poster, one call is enough for professional to either vote you or reject you. I will be asking my colleagues in the fraternity to vote for me.
And in the spirit of news gathering, we'll be following up. When are the elections? Thursday?
Pardon?
29th.
Thursday, on 29th.
Okay.
Allow me to make a statement. I know all the candidates who are running for this position, but I've interacted with Ishmael for about 11 years. And he creates the impression that he's like Caesar's wife, is beyond reproach. So if he gets the opportunity to go to the Judicial Service Commission, I hope that his priority will be to ensure that we've got the right number of judges and magistrates, and also encourage, the e-system. I hope that you will not complain about Mora accessing justice in a swift manner. And then I hope that you will remain loyal to Kenya's national and public interest.
Okay.
100%. Thank you.
Definitely. May the best man win, and we hope you don't go missing once or you get that position.
Oh, it's not in my nature.
Once in a while.
It's not in my nature to do that.
Are you suggesting that this may be his last show?
No. Last show perhaps as just an advocate. We might have to add the title. But gentlemen, thank you so much for your time. Mukua, it's always a pleasure adding your input right here to the issues we were discussing. Advocate Wakili, asante sana for your time. Ishmael Nyaribo, all the best as you journey on. My name is Jesse Rogers. That brings us to the end of tonight's edition of Checkpoint. Hope you're adequately informed. We evaluated some of the week's top developments and, of course, informed you about today's top developments. Good night and God bless.